Have you ever been replaced? Not slowly, not fairly, just overnight. One day you matter, the next day no one even looks at you. No explanation, no warning. Just a quiet shift, like the world moved on without telling you. That's Dave, Dr. Octavius Brine. But nobody calls him that, and that's the problem. Before the Penguins, he was the star. Central Park Zoo, crowds, cameras, applause. He wasn't just there, people came for him. He performed and people reacted. He existed and people noticed. He was seen. And that feeling, it's addictive. Because once you've been seen like that, once you've been chosen like that, it stops being a moment and starts becoming who you are. Then the Penguins arrive. And here's the thing, they don't try harder than him. They don't perform better. They're not more skilled. They're just liked. Effortlessly, naturally, without trying to earn it. And just like that, everything shifts. No announcement, no explanation. Just smaller crowds, quieter reactions. People walking past you like you're part of the background now. And this is the part that really breaks him. He didn't get worse. He didn't fail. He didn't lose his talent. He stayed exactly the same. And somehow, that stopped being enough. So what do you do when you didn't fail, but you still lost? When the rules you were playing by suddenly don't work anymore, and nobody tells you what changed? Dave makes a decision. Not a loud one, not dramatic, a quiet one. The kind that forms slowly and then locks in. If I'm not loved, I'll be remembered. And that's the moment everything shifts. Not from good to evil, but from invisible to impossible to ignore. He reinvents himself. New name, new identity. Dr. Octavius Brine. A scientist, a villain. Something bigger, something louder. Because if people won't look at you with admiration, they will look at you with fear. And fear is still attention. Fear still means you matter. But this was never really about penguins, not at its core. It's about what they represent. Effortless acceptance. Something he never had. Because Dave had to earn it. He had to perform, impress, deliver. His value came from what he could do. The penguins didn't have to do any of that. They just showed up, acted like themselves, and people loved them for it. And that creates a very specific kind of pain. Not just they took my place, but why was it so easy for them and so hard for me? That question doesn't have an easy answer, so instead he creates one. If I lost being loved, they should too. So he builds a plan, not just to defeat them, but to take away the one thing that made them special. Turn penguins into monsters. Strip away what made them lovable. Because if it wasn't fair for him, then fairness itself becomes the enemy. And this is where it stops being just a villain story. Because this is human. You've felt this. Maybe not this extreme, but some version of it. You see someone succeed without struggling the way you did. You see someone get what you had to fight for, just by being themselves. And something inside you tightens. Not hate, not exactly, just something uncomfortable. Because their existence quietly asks a question you don't want to answer. If they didn't have to earn it, then why did you? Dave isn't just angry, he's hurt. And more than that, he's confused. Because he followed the rules, or at least he thought he did. If I perform well, I'll be loved. And for a while, that worked. That belief held everything together. It gave his effort meaning. It made the struggle worth it. Until one day, it didn't. And nobody explained why. So he does what people do when something doesn't make sense. He simplifies it. It's not me, it's them. And that belief protects him, because if it's them, then he doesn't have to question himself. He doesn't have to face the possibility that his worth was never stable to begin with. But it also traps him, because as long as the problem is them, the real fear stays buried. What if I was only valued for what I could do, not for who I am? That's the real loss. Not popularity, not status, identity. Because when your entire sense of self is built on how people respond to you, silence doesn't just feel like rejection, it feels like erasure, like you stopped existing. That's why he goes so far. That's why he becomes extreme. Because being ignored hurts more than being hated. At least hate still acknowledges you. At least hate means you're still there. And here's the truth that makes it even harder. The Penguins never tried to replace him. They weren't competing. They weren't strategizing. They were just being themselves, the same thing Dave never felt safe enough to be. Because for him, being himself was never enough. It always had to be more, better, impressive, controlled, earned. So even when he becomes a villain, he's still performing, still trying to prove something, still chasing the same validation, just through a different role. And that's the tragedy of it, because what he actually wanted was simple. Not power, not revenge, not even recognition in the way he thinks. He wanted to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough without constantly proving it. And maybe that's why his story hits harder than it should, because a part of you understands it, not the villain part, not the revenge, but that moment when everything shifts and no one explains why. When something you thought defined your worth suddenly disappears, and you're left trying to figure out what's left of you without it. And you start asking questions you don't have answers to. Was I ever enough? Or was I just useful? That question doesn't turn most people into villains. It does something quieter. People shrink. They adapt. They become easier to accept, less noticeable, less risky. They trade authenticity for stability. Different reaction, same wound. Dave chose to fight it, to reject it, to push back against the world that stopped choosing him. Most people don't. They just slowly disappear into a version of themselves that feels safer, smaller, edited. And maybe that's why this story matters. Not because of what Dave did, but because of what he represents. The part of someone that was only ever valued when it was useful. The part that learned attention had to be earned. The part that doesn't know who it is without being watched. So maybe the real question isn't why Dave became the villain. Maybe it's this. What happens to someone when being loved was the only thing holding them together?